Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects. Round 13, finally done and dusted, and oh my days, another absolutely chaotic round of rugby league. The first Origin affected round of the year, and my word, did it live up to the expectations. Before we get stuck into my tips and predictions for round 14, let's as always look back at how we did last week. So last week we tipped 2 out of 5 games. I honestly thought after the Eels and Bulldogs got up that I was a shoo-in for a perfect round this week, only to be blindsided by 3 massive upsets, with the Dragons beating the Panthers, the Raiders jagging one against the Dolphins, and then the baby Cowboys taking down a near, well, I won't say near full strength, but a certainly more experienced Roosters outfit. So a really disappointing week, as I'm sure many people around Australia and New Zealand experienced, but we're still running at 59 out of 101 tips, which is 58% for the year. So not too shabby, but man, we've had probably 3 or 4 really tough weeks in a row. But it isn't just me, as I'll touch on just now. If you don't know by now, we do have a subscribers tipping comp this season. All the details to join are in the video description. We've got 3 massive prizes up for grabs, including grand final tickets, a jersey for next season, and an NRL shop voucher. So obviously, if you are keen to join that competition, the sooner the better. Check that out. No change at the top. I believe most people on that list got either 1 or 0 correct this week, which is, just crazy when you think that these are the people that have been leading the way in the tipping comp, and even they managed to get duck eggs last week. So yeah, very crazy. Good luck to everyone this week. Who knows what we're going to get? It's been absolutely chaos this season, which has made it fun to watch, but again, not the best for tipping. Let's just get stuck into my tips and predictions for round 14. Alright, round 14 gets underway on Friday night, because we obviously do have Origin on Wednesday, with the St. George Illawarra Dragons taking on the West Tigers at WIN Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Saints, they came marching in against an understrength Panthers side, scoring 22 unanswered second half points on their way to a 22-10 point win. They were really poor in the first half, St. George. Energy-wise, they lacked a lot of just drive, but came out in the second half like a completely different side and really out-enthused the Panthers. I thought standouts for me were Raymond Faitala-Mariner and Luciano Leilua. They were both great on the edges, and that young half, Jesse M, was, a fairly good replacement for Ben Hunt and did a really good job for the Dragons. In terms of teams list for them this week, Ben Hunt and Jaden Sewer will play Origin Game 1, so not sure if they'll back up given the short turnaround, but we'll have to wait and see for those two. And Jack Bird and Hame Sally are both listed as unlikely to return this week. Alright, and as for the Tigers, they had the bye last week, but suffered their 8th straight loss in round 12, getting thumped by the Cowboys in Townsville, 42 points to 28. The Tigers, they were right in that contest at 20 points to 16 after about 50 minutes, I think it was. But as they've done almost religiously all season, they rolled over in the final quarter. They have loads of inexperienced players caught up through injuries and suspensions, so you got to feel for the Tigers, but they need to do better. And then obviously, speaking of suspensions, David Clemmer was suspended for a hip drop tackle, and he'll be out until round 17. All right, looking at the teams list for the Tigers this week, Justin Olam and Brett Naden will be available for selection this week, having served their suspensions. Papali'i, To'a, Tupou, and Lotufainu are all under injury clouds, but they could return to the fold this week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Saints have won 4 of the last 5 games against the Tigers. Wests have won 4 of the last 6 games between the two clubs at WIN Stadium, and no games between the two sides at WIN Stadium have been won by more than 11 points, so taking either side by 1 to 12, it's probably the move this week. Alright, I'm going to take the Dragons to get us started in round 13. I think they'll be full of confidence after taking down the Panthers last week. And although the Tigers, again, have a much improved defense, their offense just leaves a lot to be desired. So I think the Dragons can win at home, but just by 1 to 12 points. Alright, moving now to the first of just 3 games on Saturday. We have the 14th placed Gold Coast Titans taking on the last placed South Sydney Rabbitohs at Cbus Super Stadium. Alright, starting first with the Gold Coast, they will also be fresh off a bye, but the week prior produced a spirited comeback against the high-flying Broncos at Suncorp, storming home to a 36-24 point victory. Standouts was obviously David Fifita, who was immense once again. He set up 2 tries and ran for almost 250 meters, which is just ludicrous for a back rower. I mean, it's almost criminal that he's missed out on Origin selection, but obviously Billy knows a lot better than we do. Another standout for me was obviously Keanu Kenny, who has been great at fullback in place of both AJ Brimson and Jaden Campbell. Really young and exciting talent, up and coming. And Beau Fermor, was also unbelievable on the other edge, also running for over 200 meters, which again, for a back rower, is just superb. In terms of teams list for the Titans this week, plenty of crucial players are expected back. That includes Kieran Foran, Jojo Fifita, and Jaden Campbell. However, Philip Sami, AJ Brimson, and Tana Boyd are still expected to be sidelined for a wee bit longer. Alright, and as for the Rabbitohs, they finally snapped their losing streak, beating the Parramatta Eels during Indigenous round, 42 points to 26. I thought Jack Whiten looked good on his return to the halves, and he came up with some really crucial error plays that really did inspire his side. More standouts, Kalamatangi, Sean Kepi I thought was great after being dropped earlier in the season, and Jai Arrow was also really strong through the middle and on the edge there. So some really good performances from the South Sydney forwards, who have been, I guess, a bit under the pump from the media and from their fans for not showing a lot of that punch so far this season. In terms of teams list for the Bunnies, Cody Walker obviously missed that game, but is expected to return to the fold this week. While Cam Murray, Jai Gray, and Campbell Graham aren't due back for a few more weeks. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Rabbitohs, they have won 8 straight and 14 of the last 16 games against the Titans. The Titans, they've also never beaten the Bunnies at Cbus, losing all 7 of their games there since 2014. Now, geez, this is a bit of a coin flip for me, but I am going to back the home side here, the Gold Coast Titans. I know the Bunnies obviously got broke their losing streak last time out, and will be fresh off a bye, as the Titans, but I do think the Titans have shown more so far this season. Their defense has been a little bit questionable. I mean, they conceded 34 points on their way to beating the Broncos, but to their credit, they did hang in there and come from behind. So yeah, we'll go Gold Coast. Gold Coast 1-12 to finally beat the Titans. The Souths, the Rabbitohs at Cbus, but just by 1 to 12 points. All right, moving now to the second game on Saturday, we have the 10th placed North Queensland Cowboys hosting the 13th placed NZ Warriors at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. All right, starting first with the Cowboys, they had one of their best 80 minutes of the season, despite missing 5 of their first choice players to Origin, beating the Roosters in a close one, 18 points to 16. North Queensland, they won that on the back of their defence and discipline. They conceded half the amount of penalties as the Roosters. Drinkwater was also the best on ground for the Cowboys, with 3 line breaks, over 130 metres, and he scored a crucial try. Jason Taumalolo, I thought, was also huge off the bench. He racked up, I think, 170 run metres in just 50 minutes, which is a great stint from JT. So yeah, really good performance from a few Cowboys, more experienced players when they needed it, with a good chunk of their first choice players out through Origin. So speaking of the Origin players, in terms of teams list for the Cowboys this week, Holmes, Taulangi, Dearden, Cotter, and Nene all feature in Origin Game 1, but I'd probably expect them to back up if ready and willing. And in terms of the Warriors, they will also be fresh off the bye, but the week prior produced yet another incredible performance while under strength to defeat the Dolphins at home, 24 points to 20. Standouts for me, Dalen at the back. I mean, he was unreal, ran for over 200 metres, and he also scored a crucial try. Timari Martin, though, was definitely the best on ground for me, scoring a try and forcing, I think, 3 or 4 repeat sets down the stretch, which really proved pivotal in helping the Warriors break down the Finns' defence and score those game-winning tries. Another really gutsy performance from the Warriors, given they were missing so many big-name players, and it really does keep their season alive. Speaking of all the players the Warriors are missing in terms of teams list, Adam Fanua-Blake will return to the fold this week after being stood down. CNK, Tohu Harris, SJ, Rocco Berry, Wade Egan, Tane Tuapiki, and Kurt Capewell are all listed to return from injury this week. So if they all do return, then the Warriors will be looking near full strength, which is something they haven't been for a majority of the season. All right, looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Wars have won 5 of the last 7 meetings. North Queensland, though, they have won 2 of the 3 games between the two sides at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. The Cowboys, they also have a great record at home, They've won 13 of the last 16 games in Townsville. Fairly straightforward one for me, mainly because I am biased. I'm going to take the Warriors 1-12. I think if they get their full contingent back, they'll be up against a fairly exhausted Cowboys outfit if they do choose to back up their Origin players. I know the stats certainly do suggest that the Cowboys are near unbeatable in Townsville when they play the Warriors. So I certainly don't mind the Cowboys in this one, but obviously being a Warriors fan, we're taking the Wars 1-12. All right, and the final game on Saturday should be an absolute classic. Really, really good test for the Sharks, who are up against the Broncos at Suncorp after 2 very disappointing losses. All right, starting first with the Broncos, they had the bye last week, but the week prior were sensationally upset by the Gold Coast Titans at home, 34 points to 36. The Broncos made 14 errors to the Titans 6, so they were just far from their best. Potentially, they didn't respect their opposition, I thought, and they got caught in a bit of a shootout with their off-the-cuff, high-flying style proving to be their detriment. Payne Haas, though, was the clear standout, scoring the opening try and running for over 250 meters, which is, even more incredible when you consider all of the stuff he has going on in his personal life right now. For him to come out there and perform at that level week in and week out is, I guess, a testament to the player he is, but also the person. So, big ups Payne Haas. All right, and in terms of teams list for the Broncos, involved in Origin, you've got Reece Walsh, Selwyn Cobbo, Haas again, Paddy Carrigan, Ezra Mam, and Brendan Piakura. But they should obviously be back for this game if willing and able. And Tony Staggs is also due back from a rib injury. All right, and as we touched on, as for the Sharks, they suffered back-to-back losses for the first time this season, conceding over 30 points to the Parramatta Eels, 34 points to 22. Cronulla, though, although they lost, they completed at 100% for over 3/4 of that game, only making their first error in the 68th minute, which is, incredible. But they did struggle to make meters. I thought their starting front rowers really did get out-muscled. I thought Talakai was huge off the bench, and Teague Wilton was great and put in a big shift as captain. They did really miss Nico's kicking game, though, and they were forced to bring the ball deep out of their own end, thanks to Mitchell Moses' return for the Eels. And it just wore them down, and they couldn't get the field position they needed. And in terms of teams list for Cronulla, both Nico Hines and Cam McInnes are part of Origin Game 1 this week. Hines, though, I'd say would most likely be rested this weekend, given he's got that lingering calf injury. I doubt they'll make him play, 160 minutes in 4 days, but we'll have to wait and see. I'd assume McInnes, though, will be available for the Sharks this weekend. All right, looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Broncos have won 3 of the last 4 games against the Sharks. Brisbane have also won 12 of the last 17 games between the two clubs at Suncorp, and 8 of the last 9 meetings have been decided by 10 points or less. So if you are a betting man, take the 1-12 line either way. Looking at the live odds brought to you by our good friends at SpinBet, the Broncos are $1.52 favourites, with the Sharks coming back at $2.55. The points line is currently 5.5, obviously in favour of the Broncos. If you do want to check out SpinBet, they are sponsoring these videos going forward. Scan that QR code on your screen now. Also, scan the other QR code and join our free Discord server. We give out all sorts of tips. Crossed over 500 members now, which is just great and incredible, and very, very thankful for that. So do us a favour, do yourself a favour, check out both SpinBet and our free Discord. All right, moving now to the first of 2 games on Sunday. We have the table-topping Melbourne Storm hosting the 11th placed Newcastle Knights at Amy Park. All right, starting first with the Storm, they had the bye last week, but the week prior were ambushed by the Sea Eagles at Brookie, 26 points to 20. It was a very uncharacteristic performance from the Storm. They struggled to complete a set early, and they were starved of both territory and possession. In a losing side, I thought Katoa and Fa'alongo were great, but ultimately it was their collective errors that proved too costly, and the Storm were unable to defend their mistakes. In terms of teams list for Melbourne this week, Will Warbrick is under an injury cloud, as is obviously Ryan Pappenhausen, who is currently listed to return this week or next. Cam Munster obviously suffered that groin injury and is sidelined until around round 20. In terms of Origin selections, Xavier Coates and Harry Grant are involved for Queensland, but will likely back up if they do avoid injury. And as for the Knights, they had their winning streak snapped at home by the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs in devastating fashion, 32 points to 2. The Knights never looked likely to score despite playing a quarter of their game with a one-man advantage, desperately needing some X-factor or direction in their offense, but instead they went for like one-out hit-ups and one after another, hit up. It was a tough watch. David Armstrong obviously had a bit of a mixed night after being near perfect for the first month of footy, which is, always destined to happen at some point. And it was the kind of performance I'd kind of expected from Newcastle for a few weeks. And ultimately, Newcastle fans will shoot me in the comments, but I think it's probably a sign of what's to come. No new injuries though, so any changes will be performance-based only. Jacob Saifidi was obviously charged for headbutting Reid Marnie in the dying stages and was sent off, or sin-bin, sorry. But he has escaped with just a monetary fine, so we'll be able to play this weekend. Alright, looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Knights beat the Storm earlier this season and have won 2 straight against the Storm. That is after they snapped an 11-game losing streak. Newcastle, they have only won 2 games at Amy Park since 2010. And Melbourne, they have won 4 of the last 5 games there. Looking at the live odds too, brought to you by Spinbet. The Storm are clear favourites at $1.22, with the Knights coming back at $4.20, 4.20 blaze it. And the points line is currently 13.5 points. Fairly straightforward one for me. I think the Storm bounced back after a disappointing loss to not only the Sea Eagles, but 2 back-to-back losses to the Knights. So I'm going to take Melbourne here, 13+. Moving now to the last game on Sunday, we have the 3rd-placed Penrith Panthers taking on the 7th-placed Manly Sea Eagles at Bluebet Stadium in a rematch from earlier this season. Right, starting first with the Panthers, they were held scoreless and steamrolled by the St. George Dragons in the second half, going down 22 points to 10. I think it's certainly hard to read too much into that performance by the Panthers given the players they had out for Origin, but they made far too many errors and conceded quite a few soft tries. Jesse McLean was great in just his second crack of first grade, scoring that incredible try given the torrential rain and the conditions that night. James Fisher-Harris I thought was also really, really good. But he obviously lost his partner in crime, Moses Leota, around the 25-minute mark. And Leota is looking at some time on the sidelines with a hamstring injury. In terms of teams list for the Panthers this week, Dylan Edwards has obviously gone down with injury, so won't play in Origin, but will be sidelined for a wee while. That doesn't mean that To'o, Luai, Yo, and Martin do play in State of Origin Game 1 on Wednesday, but will likely back up given the turnaround time. And the sort of recent losses from the Panthers. Every game now is a little bit more important. Right, and as for Manly, they will be coming off the bye, but the week prior managed to get one over the Melbourne Storm in the Battle of Brookie, 26 points to 20. A fairly scrappy performance, if I'm honest, from both sides, but the Sea Eagles were the better side, and they were able to take their chances. Tommy Talau I thought was great and has been pretty consistent since moving to Manly this season. A bit of a dark horse. Really Talau, but has been really, really great getting Manly out of trouble in their own end. In terms of teams list for the Sea Eagles this week, I don't think there was any injuries in that game, so they should be near full strength. Both Daly Cherry Evans will play for Queensland, and Hamoli Olakuatu will make his New South Wales debut on Wednesday. But again, they should be good to back up this weekend. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, Manly beat the Panthers earlier this season. That was in Brookie at 30, and that was 32 points to 18. Prior to that, the Panthers had won 8 straight against the Sea Eagles, and the Panthers, they have won 6 of the last 7 games against Manly at home, dating all the way back to 2015. The live odds currently have the Panthers at $1.32 favourites, with the Birds coming back at $3.35. The line is currently 9.5 points. Alright, fairly straightforward one for me. I think the Panthers play their Origin stars. They make amends for what was a disappointing performance against the Dragons. So for me, Penrith 1-12. Alright, moving now to the final game of the slightly shorter round 14. That is the Bulldogs, the 9th placed Bulldogs taking on the 15th placed Parramatta Eels at Accor Stadium on the Monday. Right, Monday people, remember that. Alright, starting first with the Dogs, they produced yet another incredible defense-focused performance, holding the Knights tryless in Newcastle 32 points to 2. I mean, I could spend a long time giving the Dogs their props. I jumped on stream last week and praised their defense and said that would be the reason why they would beat the Knights, and certainly that was the reason, man. I think they are either now second best defense in the league, only behind Penrith, which is just incredible considering where they were over the past, 2 to 3 years. Even with their origin players out, they did such a great job on attack. I thought Jacob Preston was immense. I thought Sexton looked good again. Addo-Carr was great for the time he spent on the field. I mean, a real team performance off the back of their defense. And to do that with two men in the sin bin as well is just incredible. They played, 75% of that game down a man. So full credit to the Dogs, man. They are the real deal. And it's time everyone started to jump on the train just like the Warriors last year. And in terms of teams, it's like I just touched on, Josh Addo-Carr did his hamstring. Is looking at about 8 to 10 weeks on the sidelines, which is obviously a massive blow for the Bulldogs. Matt Burton is involved in Origin Game 1 and Stephen Crichton too, but both players will likely back up again this week. All right, and as for the Eels, they welcome back Mitchell Moses and Clint Gutherson with a clinical performance against the competition-leading Sharks, 34 points to 22. I thought Moses' kicking game was pinpoint and, was really the difference. It was the best game, though, in weeks for the Parramatta forward pack, and they really limited the meters of the Cronulla side. Dylan Brown was also so much better, being back at 6 and able to play his natural game, and he just combined seamlessly with Mitchell Moses. They just knew where to be for each other, and it just made the whole thing look and feel effortless. In terms of teams list for Parramatta, there are no players involved in Origin and no new injuries, so they should be relatively unchanged, although Ryan Madison is expected back this week. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Eels, they have won 14 of the last 17 games against the Bulldogs. Parramatta have won 9 of the last 11 games at a core. And the Dogs, though, they have won 3 of the 4 games played against the Eels on Monday. So take that stat how you will. Ooh, a really, really interesting game to end the round. I think the Bulldogs win, though. I think, as I've said for a few weeks now, the Bulldogs' defense is unbelievable. It's the effort they show collectively as a team, though, that really sets them apart from a team like the Eels that have lacked any effort all season, to be fair. Even with players gone, they've stood up, scored points, defended their line, and I think they can do that again against the Eels and sort of snap a bit of that hoodoo with the Eels having such a dominant record against them. So yeah, for me, the Doggies get it done on Monday, 1-12. Bang, just like that, we are done for another week. If you are enjoying the long weekend like we are over here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, have fun, be safe. Thanks for tuning in still. I do appreciate that. Leave your tips and predictions in the comments below. We'll do another stream soon once I can fix my mic, and we'll go from there, boys. Much love. See you in the next one.